All right. Good evening, everybody. How are we? We're doing this live Sunday evening as usual. As many of you will probably know, I'm a United fan. So right now, I'm a little devastated at a 5-0 loss to Liverpool. If you do support Liverpool, by the way, you're watching this either live or on replay. Congratulations, by the way. But oh my God, it's a bad evening for a United supporter. But I'm hoping that this live stream and the conversation we'll have will kind of distract me from that. So welcome everybody. I hope everyone's well. I'm just going to open the chat at the moment. We do these every Sunday, and this live session is going to be no different. We're going to be talking about investing, so on and so forth. Take some questions from you guys as well. I have got perfect. Naom's just saying he can hear me loud and clear. Perfect. I've actually got Ralik on. Now, Ralik obviously has been on the channel a couple of times. He's been on these live streams a couple of times, talking a little bit about Bitcoin. So I think what we wanted to do this evening was focus on Bitcoin because it's been a really exciting week for Bitcoin. Obviously, I did the video last Tuesday talking about the fact that we had some ETFs that were due to come online that were signed off, approved by the SEC. That happened this week. And as a result of that, Bitcoin hit an all-time high this week. It's retrenched a little bit right now, but we do want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin, maybe the wider crypto space specifically, maybe do a little bit of a comparison, because when Reddit came on, he came on like a good few months ago. We're going to do a little bit of a contrast between like, where was it back then? Where is it right now? Maybe get into some predictions around what it might end up at the end of this year, the forward look. And actually, because we were talking about this just before I went live, I've taken a little bit of profits at the top of the Bitcoin pricing. So I think I took profits about 65,000. So at the minute, it's just above 60K, I think, right now. I actually need to get my my other account open and open that on another screen. I'm just going to do that so I can reference back to this. Talk about actually, because I've taken profits and I've got some money lying around, if I were to go back in, and maybe this is something that you guys can actually learn from as well. If you were to go back in, Ray actually trades, and he's one of the popular investors on eToro. So at what point might be a good point to basically get back in on a retrenchment, on a drawback in the Bitcoin price? At the minute, it is just above, it's $60,425 a coin. So if you have any questions on Bitcoin or on investing or the wider crypto space, then Relic is definitely the right person to ask on this. We're going to have a good conversation about this. But yeah, I'll get to the questions in a minute. I know that Coolio's put a question in here as well. We'll get to the questions in a minute, so bear with us. But I'm going to bring in Relic. How's it going, man?
Hello. No, it's going well. Yeah, I do feel sorry for the United supporters at the moment. Unfortunately, I am a Liverpool fan myself, but
you had a good game.
Yeah. My girlfriend's a United supporter, so I've learned to sort of tone it down a little bit. You don't want to come home after the game and then. You just got to be careful of it.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, look, this is one of those things where it's like, it's devastating to watch, man. Because I don't know, it's just one of those weird situations. And I guess it's the same thing with, investing and anything in life. When Klopp went to Liverpool, they've had a plan, a consistent plan, an identity and a way of doing things, a methodology all the entire time, where United is just kind of like, we're going to try this and we're going to do this and we're going to get that person in, but there's no real identity. And it's funny actually, because when obviously they try to get Klopp at United, and I think this is something that is fundamentally wrong with the club. The reason why he didn't join apparently is because he felt it was like Disneyland, like it was like, and I don't exactly know what he meant by that, but I think my interpretation of what he meant by that was it's kind of a place that lives off old glory, like this is what we've done, we're so great, but not really forward thinking, future thinking. Yeah. And I think that's a real problem with the club. And what they do with Solskjaer right now, I guess, is going to be indicative of whether that statement is true or not. I don't know, but it's unfortunate. It really, really is for where we are in the season, and the players that we've got, the squad that we've got. I mean, Jesus Christ, like it's just a shame, man. It really, really is. It's a shame.
Yeah, it
just goes to show that it's not about the players. It's not about the names. It's how you play.
Exactly. It doesn't help like half your good players on the bench or not being put in the positions that they should be, or I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of stress. I'm sure he's going to sleep a little bit stressed out tonight, but
yeah,
we'll have to sort of see what happens with Ollie in the long run.
Absolutely. So I want to say welcome to Andy. Andy, how you doing? Frank, welcome. Joshua, how you doing? Alex, we've got a few good people on here already. So let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin. When did you first come onto the channel? It's a good few months. It's in the summer. I think it may have been about May or June, something like that.
I think it was around June 7th, if I remember correctly. So yeah, back then we just started with the Bitcoin crash. There was that massive fall from sort of mid 60s all the way down to, I think it reached a low of around 30 to like 33K at one point. And funny enough, that was literally when I just came on as well. It was a very stressful time in my life. Obviously, trying to explain to people that, listen, things aren't looking so great right now, but I'm doing everything I can, and it's difficult to sort of show people value in a negative return, especially when, say, like Bitcoin's dropped a good like 50-60%. Trying to show them, okay, yes, it's dropped, but our returns haven't actually dropped that much because of these steps that I've put into place.
The risk management,
people just see red, and then they see red. With their copy. Crypto crash is always a stressful time in my life, but in terms of what to do in those situations, I'm relatively calm. When you go through enough of them, it's sort of like, oh, here we go again,
Here's a question for you then, because I would love to know actually, because Radek is a popular investor on eToro, so the people can copy trade you and stuff like that. They can copy you as a trader. So behavioral wise, do you find that when things dip off, people tend to uncopy you? What do you tend to kind of see from a behavioral point of view in things are falling?
Funny enough, when things are falling, that's when I'm not so much about, okay, let me grow my copies. It's more like, let me maintain it, because yes, people see the negative and they see the fall, and then they tend to uncopy because they're like, oh, this guy's losing me money, even though it's like not necessarily losing you value. So it's like two different things. So it's also, what I've found is, if you don't communicate during those times, that is when you're in free fall in terms of copiers and assets under management and so forth. That's why literally my entire goal since I really started to make a push in eToro was over communication. I try and post pretty much every single day, whether it's sort of like information about what's going on in the market, what's going on in my current portfolio, or maybe just like share a YouTube video or so forth that I've created, to just sort of keep up that constant communication. Because when things are dropping by like 50 to 60%, all copiers want is that reassurance that you're not asleep at the wheel. So I'll be like, yes, things are bad right now, but it's bad across the entire market. These are the steps I'm taking to make sure that we actually get out on the other side. And that can be a very challenging message to get across. So yeah, it's over communication.
I would agree with that, because even when I was kind of like advising and stuff, the time when people need you the most, they don't need you when they're making money, because when they're making money, it's fine. You're in profit, so there isn't really anything for them to worry about. When markets are trailing off, that's when they need to know, right? Okay, are we still in a good place, or do we need to change something, or is it all good? And that's where that reassurance, that communication, just being there really does make a big difference, because it's that confidence booster, isn't it? It's kind of like, because a lot of people will be happy with, look, the market's doing this, but this is what we think. This is why the portfolio is positioned this way, because we think we're going to be able to take advantage of it. And over the long term, they want that rationale. And I found that rationale is often good enough for people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's been probably, if I had to give any advice to anyone who's sort of trying to make it as a popular investor, it's talk to your copiers. Like, your actions have a direct impact on their finances. you need to talk to them about what you're doing. And it's too often I see people just not communicating, and then something happens and everyone starts freaking out. Because now the person who's managing, or like sort of has a direct impact on your money, is not talking to you, and you don't know if they've sort of gone on holiday or just disappeared off the face of the earth. So yeah, during those drops, communicate with everybody involved, talk to them. And I'd have days where I'd have a full day of work. I'd be watching the charts the entire time, say like a 10 to 15% in a day drop in crypto. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to go live afterwards. So jump on Twitch, have a stream, talk to people, reassure them, upload a video the next day, also reassuring. So you're trying to reach as many people as possible to be like, it's okay, we'll get through it. It's nothing bad. Or if it is bad, being like, this is what I'm doing to make sure that we do come out at the other side.
Absolutely. So what are the trends that you've seen in Bitcoin since obviously coming on the channel in like June? What have you found?
Yeah, so there was that long consolidation period, and I think we had a few chats about that when I did pop on here and there. I think at the time nothing was really happening. We just had that initial massive drop. Bitcoin was sitting around 33K, and then I think when I came on, additionally, it was maybe bumping towards 40K, coming back down, sort of in that range, and it did that for about 4 or 5 months. Since then, if everyone did just remain calm and trust the process, I mean, Bitcoin went from 33K to 60K, that's up 80%. You've got Ethereum up 55% from 2.6K to 4K. Cardano up 35%, Polkadot up 95%. We also chatted about Solana, I remember in the first line.
Yeah.
That's up 370%.
Wow.
That was one of the ones I listed as sort of like a high risk investment at the time. Yeah. I think it's sort of reached more as a state, like a medium risk crypto in that sense. So I wouldn't put it sort of in that high risk because it has bumped its way into the top 10. And then you've got other cryptos like Basic Attention Token, which hasn't moved.
Yeah, I've actually started to buy Basic Attention. I'm using the browser and everything now. It's really cool. And yeah, I think I want that to catch on a little bit more, because I think what it's actually designed to do, if more people knew about it, people would actually use it more. Use the great, because it's a no-brainer. And for the longest time, thinking about the fact that every time we click on something or use something, we're being advertised to, just be able to have a little bit of that power back is quite refreshing, to be fair.
Exactly, and it's sort of reaching that stage now where I'm watching it, it's not moving, and I'm starting to wonder, am I losing my mind, or is everyone else just blind? Like, which one is it? And I guess we'll have to wait for another few months to actually see if like I was wrong or if everyone was just blind at the time. But for me, it's still one of the most underrated cryptos right now, with probably the most upside potential. But that comes with its risks too, because it hasn't like caught on in the way that I think it should have.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. Definitely. What else have you found? So obviously consolidation, so on and so forth. Fast forward to today, obviously with the ETFs. So the ETFs have been kind of like the big conversation piece over the last maybe week or so. What's your take on the ETFs, by the way? Because I didn't realize that they were going to be futures ETFs until they actually got released. And it looks like the Valkyrie one, I think the Valkyrie one was due to go, I think it was either on Thursday, and I don't know whether it's live or not, but that's also a futures ETF, because the SEC have said that whether they feel comfortable with signing off on an ETF from a regulatory point of view is if it works under the futures framework. So what's your take on those?
Yeah, so like you said, SEC isn't budging, and they're the way I see it is they're using this as a test run to sort of see how it's going to have an impact on the entire market as a whole. And because it's a futures ETF as well, I think it's just an additional reason why it's not really suitable for like retail investors.
Retail,
Not only does it have like quite high management fees. I mean,
it was like 0.95%. It's crazy. It's nuts.
It's wild.
And then you've got transaction and storage fees on top of that as well.
Exactly. There's no real reason to go for the ETF over the physical asset, unless there's some type of restriction preventing you from buying Bitcoin whichever country you are in the world. But it's my understanding that I haven't heard of a country sort of where you would be able to buy the ETF, but not the actual underlying. So, I mean, get rid of the fees, get rid of the other volatility that comes with like contract expirations and so forth. And that's why I think just stick to the regular underlying asset. Where I do think it is a massive opportunity with this ETF, and why you saw such ridiculous volumes. Like I was actually quite shocked. It was
crazy. It was like 500 million or something like that on day one. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I think it was second in terms of the most volume of an ETF, only second to gold when the gold ETF was released. So it was crazy, but now it sort of opens up an opportunity for even more institutional money to flow in. And I think it's sort of how you pair that ETF with existing like portfolios. This could potentially open it up to, say, certain pension funds. Maybe they have like a 1% stake or like a 2% stake in this ETF. Like just small exposure to crypto, which they might not have had before because of their like prospectus and the rules of their actual fund previously. And now maybe this opens up a new opportunity. So we saw the massive impact of the ETF. It's sort of, Bitcoin was already approaching its previous all-time highs, and it was sort of touching on that 60,000 mark, and everyone was like, okay, we might get there. And then ETF approval got announced, and then all of a sudden it shoots through the roof, and it completely destroyed its previous all-time high and shot up to just under 70,000. I think it was 69999.
Yeah,
699. Well, however many nines, but it was like $1 off. And now it's come back, the hype's dying down, and honestly, it's looking like a potentially great opportunity to get back in right now if you did take profits at the top.
You know what? And I want to get onto that actually, but I think I see one possible reason why, if you're a retail investor, you would potentially go and buy one of the futures ETFs, because I know in the States, that if you go and buy, so for example, the BITO, which is the ProShares ETS futures, Bitcoin futures ETF, you can have that in a Roth IRA. You can have it in their tax efficient vehicles. So technically, and this is one of the big things about crypto, and I've been researching this for a while. Currently, there is no way for you to invest in cryptocurrency, and in the UK, be able to use your £20,000 ISA allowance to keep all of it tax free. Technically speaking, because it's an ETF, albeit a futures ETF, as a retail investor, if it's available here, and I know you can go and get it on Stake. Stake don't have ISAs right now, but if they did, technically speaking, you could get it into an ISA wrapper, which will mean that all of your profits and your gains from that will be completely tax-free. That will be the only time where I would see that actually maybe retail investors might decide to go and actually use it, where it's you're okay paying the 1, maybe 1.5%, maybe 2% fees, because you're going to get the rest of your gains pretty much completely tax-free. That's the only case. But yes, Stake haven't got it right now. I don't know if it's on Trading 212, and if you haven't already got a Trading 212 account in the UK, well, you can't have it anyway. But it will be interesting to see what happens and where else it gets put on. If it gets on free trade, then possibly you might be able to get into an ISA on free trade, but I don't think that it's on free trade just yet. So, yeah.
No, we're going to have to sort of just wait and see how this plays out. I think the power of being able to have any type of tax-free capital gains on that investment would be incredible. I mean, why wouldn't you sort of get into it then? It just seems logical to at least have a small amount of exposure, at least, to crypto in a sense. And I mean, it starts with Bitcoin, and then what happens? We'll probably see Ethereum, and then sort of more of a broad crypto portfolio. And that's just going to be more and more money into the industry as a whole, which will drive prices even further up. But you mentioned that you took profits at, what was it, around 60, 65?
I took profits about 65, 66. So I'm kind of like sat there at the minute thinking, right, so I've taken a little bit off the table, because I was up like 100 and something odd percent or something, and I just thought it's crazy if I don't. So at the moment, I'm thinking, right, it's drawn back a little bit now because I've got some money lying around elsewhere. If I wanted to put, another 10K in, when is that? When is the right position? And obviously, you'll be looking at charts and looking at, sort of some of the technical analysis around this. What are your thoughts? I mean, if you had the opportunity to have a lot of cash go back into Bitcoin right now, what would be the floor or the price that you would be looking to get back in at?
So I think we're pretty much going to see one of two things right now. Right now we're tapping at the support of 60K. It has held, like it's dipped below, but it hasn't closed below 60K since breaking above it, which I think is a very, very strong indicator that 60K looks right now to be the sort of the initial floor, which I'm hoping it is. And if it can sort of maintain that, and this today it did dip a little bit below, but if it can close above 60K, I do think that is a very strong signal, and I would expect to see a bounce, sort of retesting the 65K levels, and then push for another all-time high, hopefully before the end of the new week. That would be amazing. But it, like you also said, it could dip back below. So in terms of an entry strategy for me right now, if I've got extra money available, it would be literally dollar cost average in, probably from around about now. I'd look to maybe open between, say, 25 to 30% back into it, and sort of see what happens next. If it's looking strong, like it's not going to dip back below 60, then maybe just increase
the exposure a little bit more.
Exactly. Instead of buying it all at once, because yes, you could technically stick that all in, but also in terms of when is the right time to buy, I don't ever think there is a right time to buy, especially with Bitcoin in terms of where it's going, realistically where it's going. I would say there's never really a bad time to buy, in my opinion. And if we look back, say, 12, 24, 36 months from now, if you had to say to someone, would you have bought Bitcoin? Would you buy Bitcoin at 60K if you had the opportunity? I would be shocked if anybody says no, because I don't think we're going to be anywhere close to where we are now. Maybe I'm just sort of absolutely obsessed with crypto, and I might have like too high expectations. I don't know, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we do hit six figures before the end of the year.
That's interesting, actually. I mean, because I've said it a number of times, and I wouldn't say I'm still getting my head around like crypto. I understand the basics and the fundamentals around it and stuff. I think, and I did a video where I talked about Bitcoin, and I was just interested because I watch a lot of content, and I watched Warren Buffett's annual investors kind of like meeting, and he was talking about how over the course of between 1965 and 2020, he'd returned like 2.8 million% for his investors in his Berkshire Hathaway investment portfolio. And I was like, okay, I would just love to see what that looks like for like Bitcoin. Like traded back in 2009 for the first time at like 0.08 cents. And like the numbers are crazy. It's like it's 72 million% return in that short 12-year period. And it's like, for me, in the investment world, we always talk about, track record. It hasn't got track record. We need something with a track record so you can at least kind of use it as a basis to map and to kind of like build some kind of analysis around what you might expect in the future in terms of modeling. Well, it's already got that now, and it is the number one crypto in the world. And I'll be interested to ask you this question, actually, because I had someone in the comments almost have an argument with me over the user case for Bitcoin now, right? Yeah. So it's my opinion, being in the investment world, that the user case for Bitcoin has evolved. And it's evolved to, it is now seen as a store of value and a hedge against inflation. This person was arguing, well, it's in the white paper that it's there as a peer-to-peer payment system. And I'm like, okay, that might be true, but I feel as though there are other cryptocurrencies that will perform that a lot better. What's your view on that?
I'm on the exact same page as you. Yes, that was Satoshi's initial vision with Bitcoin. But the truth is, as sort of crypto has evolved, Bitcoin's way too slow and clunky for day-to-day use of transactions. It's not meant to sort of be I think exactly what Satoshi had in mind when he created it. I think a lot of his core principles and values that he sort of has in that white paper, Bitcoin still meets, and it meets with flying colors in my opinion. But in terms of using as a day-to-day transaction, I don't really think that it is the best option right now. I mean, there's so many better projects that have much faster transaction times, and they're sort of channeled in that way. So I'd say, what is Bitcoin and sort of how does it play a role in our society right now? I would say store value, like you said, it's sort of like a digital gold and a hedge against inflation. I completely agree with that. That is its true power, and you sort of see that with especially everything going on with inflation across the world right now. Like the Fed is just printing dollars like crazy.
Yeah, I can't remember how much it was. It was something. Last time I checked, I think it was like 120 billion a month. It's ridiculous. It's nuts numbers. It's crazy numbers.
It's not sustainable. And there's only 21 million Bitcoin, or there only ever will be, and that supply is actually decreasing every single year due to Bitcoin sort of moving over to wallets that are essentially becoming stale because either the holder passes away or they lose access to the wallets and so forth. So the supply is technically decreasing over time, which just means it's even more deflationary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, so you think it's going to get to 100 by the end of the year?
Yes.
Where do you, because see, for me, and again, I could be wrong. This is all my personal opinion. This is where, these kind of conversations are not just obviously there to, for conversation's sake. I also learn from this as well. And I hope people who watch this also will learn from it as well. I think 100,000 is around the corner, just because we've got the other ETFs due to come on stream before the end of the year. I think that we could potentially see a bump that will take it to six figures, to that 100,000 mark. It's my view that in order for it to get to what people are saying the real potential is $300,000, $500,000 a coin, you're going to need to see significant institutional money come in. And I think that will only happen with more ETFs coming on stream. So I think with the SEC approving some, hopefully the UK starts to move, because now, actually, you know what? The US has moved. So if the UK moves, then Europe moves, then we might see more of these ETFs come on stream globally, which will drive down the price of the ETFs as well, which will be good for retailers. But I think that's going to be necessary for institutions, particularly the pension funds, because there's like $16 trillion in pension funds. Like a 1 or 2% allocation into Bitcoin, it's huge. I mean, I think that takes it to 500,000 easy, if not beyond that, because we're talking serious cash at that point. What do you think it's going to take to get it to 100 by the end of the year, then possibly to that 300,000 to 400,000 mark? And do you think it's going to be possible in 2022?
I would probably say that you're spot on in terms of what it needs. It needs the backing of institutional money. I think pretty much everything needs the backing of institutional money. Yes, we've seen sort of the rise of the retailer, especially in 2021, almost like sticking their middle finger up to the institutions, especially with like the meme craze.
Yeah.
But in terms of what Bitcoin needs, I do think it needs further injection from the institutions. And I would almost expect that not only through ETFs and so forth, but also just further development of the entire industry. And I think that's something that sort of gets overlooked quite a lot in the space. Is yes, there's all these institutions sort of say investing in a Bitcoin ETF and so forth, but the entire it's sort of like the .com bubble where everything is there at the moment. We've got all these cryptos, all these plans, all these projects that want to change the world. But the truth is, probably 90% of them won't be here 5, 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And the winners, the true winners, might have not have even been created yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how those future winners that haven't been created yet, how they actually come to be created. And I think that's also where a lot of this money is also going to be injected into the market as a whole. I would also say that in terms of from a retail perspective, people need to stop letting emotion get the better of themselves. And you see
That's
that
harder said than done, though, mate. You know this.
exactly.
It's habit at the end of the day. But yeah, I get you. I get you.
Exactly. So when Bitcoin does have corrections, and believe me, there will be plenty more. There always are. But as long as those drops aren't as low as the previous drops and the new highs are higher than the previous highs, it's only heading in one direction, in my opinion, in that sense. And you kind of see this trend in behavior where long-term holders of Bitcoin who sort of become numb to these types of moves. Exactly. What happens during the dips? They're buying more. Like, I've probably accumulated more crypto in this space that Bitcoin was between like 30 and 40K than I have before during this previous bull run.
Okay.
That entire time, I was just buying. Because in my mind, like I said, I'm a little bit psycho when it comes to my own personal holding of crypto. Like, I'd never expose my copiers to the level of risk I'm willing to take with crypto, because I don't see a future that isn't just completely filled with crypto in general. So you see mostly during those drops, long-term holders actually increase their holding of crypto. Yes, there is a decrease in total holders, but that's just because of the retailers freaking out and selling at a loss. But then the long-term holders are buying in, the institutions are buying in. It's very much like watch what they do and not what they say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll agree with that. Yeah.
The people who are sort of like OGs in the space, they know what's going on, and the whales who sort of end up controlling most of the market anyway, they're buying. I mean, it's a massive opportunity for them to just increase their Bitcoin exposure and hold even more.
So do you think? So you think it's going to get to 100K by the end of the year?
Yes.
Do you think in 2022, with possibly more ETFs coming on stream, do you think it could realistically rocket to 200, 300, 400,000 in 2022?
2022, I do think it's possible. I wouldn't be surprised if we do see sort of another large correction at some point in 2022. So it would sort of depend on how quickly it can recover from that correction and then start heading to new all-time highs. In terms of 200 to say 400 to 500K by the end of 2022, I'm not really sure.
It's a big jump. It's a massive jump.
That is a massive jump. In the next, for me, this is more of a safe prediction. I would say within the next 10 years, we will definitely have $1 million Bitcoin.
You reckon?
In the next 10 years. So I'm giving myself a very large time horizon. And if you think about it, that's only like sort of 20x from where we are now. Yeah,
that's true. That's very, very true. And I think why it's important, and because obviously on the channel, I talk a lot about, having a plan, financial goals, it's long-term investments, that kind of stuff. A lot of people, it's easy and very, very common for us, obviously, to think about, what's going to happen in the next 6 months, 12 months, that kind of stuff. But I think from a longer-term point of view, for a certain demographic of people from a national point of view, and internationally, in fact, as well, where you may be at that point where 10 years is a pivotal point, you're looking at that for maybe retirement purposes. It becomes very, very hard for you to ignore the crypto space and to ignore Bitcoin for that. Because even when you look at the performance in comparison to stocks, the last 12 years, I don't recall, there has never been an asset class that has returned these kinds of returns. And I think the criticism that is often leveled is, it's not this is what Warren Buffett and a lot of the big investors will start talking about. It's not an income producing asset, but actually it's not supposed to generate income in that regard. it's built on the utility. And there's a great program on Amazon. It's called Cryptopia. For anyone who hasn't watched it, go and watch that program. It literally chronicles the entire beginning of it to utilities, all kinds of stuff. It's really, really, really interesting. Go and watch that. And I just feel as though it's more of a risk to a certain extent not having a piece of crypto, a piece of Bitcoin, and some of these other coins. And there are a few questions about Shiba Inu, which we'll get to in a moment. There's a bigger risk not having any of this than just having a little holding, just to see how it's going to progress and move a bit later on. Because, you know, this kind of stuff, even yesterday, I was watching a couple of documentaries last night, and I was like, hang on a second. We talk about the fact that the technologies that, and you made this point earlier, the technologies that the blockchain can enable in terms of the real world utility, we haven't even thought about that yesterday. There is something I'm very, very passionate about that I started to think, hang on a second, could this actually work within the crypto space? And I think it actually could. And that in itself is exciting because there are so many things that we haven't even thought about just yet, which will be applicable that can be built on the blockchain for real world utility that will change pretty much everything and take it away from government and be able to put it in the control of capable entities to be able to deliver these things. And for what I'm passionate about, government's not doing a really good job at that right now. They don't have the funding for it. They don't have the resources. They don't want to assign money to this kind of stuff. So interestingly, blockchain could be a really fundamental portion or piece to try and make this so that it's widely available, but people don't have to pay the earth in order to be able to get it.
Exactly. I completely agree. And I think we're already starting to sort of see that with sort of the evolution of the NFT space as well. I would be absolutely shocked if we don't see NFTs play a massive role in sort of owning property, because that sort of seems to be sort of like where all of this can start to head and develop in terms of the whole NFT space. Yes, there's a lot of hype around NFTs and everything right now, but I don't really see the long-term utility of where the hype is right now being sustainable. When you have these little these randomly generated images selling for like hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, you sort of wonder, okay, well, yeah, now because it was the first one to do it, sure, you can sort of see how it might play an important role in the history of NFTs and why it might be seen as sort of a collector's item looking back, say, 20, 30 years in the future. But when you sort of have people combining two stock images and selling this for like tens of thousands of dollars, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's absolutely ridiculous. And you can sort of see that also when things start to enter a relatively large bubble, those things become buzzwords. And that's the main thing I've seen in terms of the scam projects that have been popping up. And you can find them relatively easy on CoinMarketCap if you go to anything that's sort of like rank 4,000 and lower.
Yeah. Well, actually, there was one last week, and I've been thinking about whether I do a video for this or not, but I'm just like, I don't know. There was one called Crypto Eats. So basically, it was supposed to be Uber Eats, but you can pay for your food with crypto. Essentially, literally, the coin went live, and in a few minutes or so, he got £500,000 cashed out.
Right.
And it's like.
Right.
It's £500,000. It's still a lot of money, but the unfortunate thing is, if he had a little bit more nerve and he held up for like a week, that would have been millions upon millions upon millions. So people do need to be careful with, you know, initial coin offerings and all this kind of stuff. They really, really do, because it is unfortunately a hotbed for scams.
Oh, definitely. That's a massive issue at the moment, and that's where I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see like the SEC start to get involved. And I hope they do, because that people shouldn't be getting away with that type of those type of scams. We've seen it time and time again. Also, Save the Kids coin, meant to be this charity coin, and then the creators get away. They basically scam everyone out of a charity coin. I mean, how much of a terrible person do you have to be to steal from children?
Yeah.
And the people who are trying to be good and kind by donating to them. It's ridiculous. But whenever there's an opportunity for someone to make money in that type of way, they'll take it.
Absolutely. And again, this is where, it is about maybe avoiding or resisting the temptation to look for new meme ones that have the potential to 500x and be logical and be pragmatic in terms of, go for some of the bigger, more established coins. Yes, they might not make you a millionaire overnight, but over the long term, they definitely have more potential to be able to do that. And just, approaching things with the acknowledgement that, there are people out there who just want to get hold of your money. And if you give them the opportunity, they'll go. So don't be a mug, essentially, and just try and be as pragmatic as possible. There are lots and lots of questions about Shiba Inu.
Okay.
Because apparently Shiba, what is it up this week? I think it's up something ridiculous right now. What are your thoughts on Shiba Inu? Do you actually have it in your portfolio?
So
or is it one that you avoid?
I avoid Shiba. I avoid pretty much most meme coins. The whole thing with Shiba at the moment is Robinhood essentially just announced that they're going to be listing SHIB. So SHIB, last time I checked, was up like 18% today. But also SHIB's graph over the past few days has just been a roller coaster. And I mean, anyone who's gotten in and managed to ride that graph all the way up, props to you. But I would highly consider starting to take profit if you haven't already. It's not one of those cryptos you want to have 80 to 100% of your equity involved, because it is extremely volatile. We saw how it lost nearly like 80% of its value in the space of a few days and didn't really recover until like a week or two ago. So I wouldn't be surprised if it does maybe pump a little bit more when it does get listed onto Robinhood. And then I'd also be very shocked if we don't see it return to its previous lows of around like August to the beginning of October. That's the main hype that's been around Shiba today. Funny enough, there was also a conversation Elon Musk was involved in, I think it was about an hour or two ago, where someone actually tweeted at him and said, "How much Shiba Inu do you have?" And he just said none. Which I found quite hilarious, because he's sort of seen as the mascot for Shiba, and now he doesn't even own any.
Is that on Twitter?
Yeah, it is.
I've got to go find it on Twitter. That is so funny. I do follow Elon, and some of the stuff that he comes out with sometimes is so funny. I'm just like, Twitter is where you kind of get your sense of humor, and he is quite a quirky, eclectic kind of person, and I would say maybe a dry sense of humor sometimes, but he's hilarious at some of the stuff that he comes out with. I'll have a look for it a bit later on, but yeah. So Shiba, you don't have.
Quickly.
Go on.
No. I don't know SHIB. I very much try to build my portfolio around sort of majority of it being the stable projects like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then branching out to, as the risk increases, there's obviously the smaller position it holds in my portfolio. And when you find these projects that are, say, like in the thousands, 2,000, 3,000s in terms of their rank on CoinMarketCap, I would never, ever really recommend putting anything more than between 1% to 5%, depending on your conviction of that project. You better know something that nobody else knows yet, because chances are it's just going to drop to zero. It is extremely, extremely risky, but it does have a lot of potential if you do manage to get that timing right. So meme coins in general, I'd say, listen, if you're a swing trader and you want to ride those waves up and down, there could be some very big opportunities. But outside of that, I try not to touch it, because trying to time it is also extremely difficult. I was looking at SHIB when it was sitting at about $30, and I'm like, this might actually not be a bad time to short it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it reached a high of like 44. So, well, I'm talking about in terms of like blocks of $1 million now. So not actually like $40, but in terms of a block of $1 million SHIB. So I have the eToro graph on my left. That's why.
Yeah.
Just in case anyone's like, wait, SHIB's $40. No, it's not. Like, don't worry. I'm sure like a lot of people will be like billionaires if that did happen.
Yeah. do you think, because obviously with Ethereum and stuff like that, ETH has obviously seen a little bit of a it's been on a bit of a, I wouldn't say a run, but it's doing okay off the back of the fact that actually Bitcoin is doing okay. And I think oftentimes within the trends, you'll find that if Bitcoin does okay, Ethereum will do okay. Maybe some of the other more established coins will do okay as well. Because the last time you were on, you made a really bold statement about ETH and where you think that might be by the end of the year. Do you think that's still the case for ETH, or do you think what's happened with Bitcoin kind of distracts people from ETH and maybe some of the other more established coins like Cardano and that as well?
So, like, I'm ride and die Ethereum. I absolutely love Ethereum. It was the first crypto I ever got involved with, and I just think in terms of how it's evolving over the years, the development's going in the right direction. I'm super excited for Ethereum 2.0 as well, and I think that's going to have a massive impact too. So initially, what we tend to see is an increase in Bitcoin initially, and then all the hypes around Bitcoin. Ethereum's sort of like checking out. It's like, okay, are we good? And then it joins, and it normally ends up doing a little bit more than what Bitcoin does, and then everything else follows. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do sort of see that. So I remember the statement I made. I said 10K ETH by the end of the year.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
And I still stand by that. I still definitely think it's achievable. And I would even go as far as to say that I wouldn't be surprised if we see sort of the flippening happen in 2022, 2023.
Okay.
I would love to see the market cap of Ethereum overtake Bitcoin. And I definitely think if any crypto has the potential to do that, it is Ethereum. And if it does happen, I'll be smiling.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I would agree with you on that, purely because of the fact that most of the digital apps are being built on Ethereum. And obviously there are challenges to Ethereum and stuff like that, but I think it's almost the gold standard, if you will. And I was reading that the SEC are trying to find ways of regulating maybe the developers of these digital apps to be able to come under their purview, which I understand that from a scams point of view, trying to get people to develop these things with certain protections in place. But again, they're creating digital apps, so it's like, come on, like seriously. So if I had an idea to do something that I'm passionate about, would I have to then sign off to the SEC or some financial regulatory body if it has nothing to do with the financial industry per se, apart from the fact that there's a token that has some value attached to it? I don't know. I don't think that they're going to be able to do that, but I know that from a legal point of view, they're trying to explore every avenue as they're wrestling to try and, take control and get control over what crypto can potentially do. I mean, you mentioned things like mortgages earlier. It's great. Be able to get your mortgage deeds as an NFT. No mortgage, bro. This is the thing. This is why I'm so excited about DeFi, right?
Yeah.
You can get your mortgage literally on the blockchain under DeFi. You got your deeds as an NFT. So you don't need a mortgage broker. You don't need a bank. You don't need a solicitor. You don't need a conveyancer. You don't need any of that nonsense. Like, you literally just get it done, and you get it done clicking a few buttons. That is exciting. That is really, really, really exciting. And in the next 10 years, I'm really interested to see how that actually works out and transpires and stuff, because that would just be incredible. It will give more power back to the people without, corporate bodies and banks and investment houses taking the piss, frankly, because they've always been able to do that because they have a monopoly on financial instruments.
Exactly. It's definitely exciting, and the banking sector as a whole is going to have to adapt. Because if they don't, we're going to see what's happened time and time again in history, and that's the complete collapse of what it was that we used to know. I mean, this is us like giving away our age, but I remember the days of going to a video store to rent a movie.
Yeah, blockbuster.
Like, exactly,
Yeah,
the blockbuster days.
yeah.
You'd go there, you'd rent a movie, and you'd go home. Now, I mean, imagine going to rent a movie. No, you go onto Netflix and you watch what you want.
Yeah.
It's at your fingertips. So
Yeah.
it's also the same thing with Kodak and the digital camera. They're like, digital camera is not going to be a thing. It was. Kodak essentially went bankrupt. So
yeah, I mean, look, I know that these financial institutions are spending billions and billions trying to figure out what they need to do and try to understand how everything works, but I really don't know. And I work in the industry. I've been in it for a very long time. I think as this progresses and things get bigger and bigger and bigger and user cases and things and people start to move towards adopting a little bit more, I think there will just be a shift at some point. And because they're not moving now, by the time they realize it, it's going to be too late. And that's just going to be that. And unfortunately, that's what I think will happen. And that's where I think it's going.
Yes. I completely agree.
Cool. So, okay. So Bitcoin, 100,000 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
2022, Ethereum 10K. I mean, Ethereum's at 4 at the moment. So you're talking doubling and some. So that'll be interesting. I have got some ETH, to be fair. But yeah, it's interesting. And I've got some basic attention and token and all that kind of stuff as well. Right. Let me just have a look and see. Look at the comment section, because I know that there are people that have been watching this that have
quite a few questions.
Right, let me have a look and see if we can get some of these through. So bear me 1 second, guys, while I scan. This is maybe one for you. So this is Swift. I put some money into Shiba a few weeks ago. It went up a lot today. What's caused that? Have you invested in it? So you haven't invested it, but there's a middle question there.
So it's the hype around the listing on Robinhood. That is what's caused this massive spike. If you invested in it a few weeks ago, I would highly consider looking at sort of where your exit point is and sort of putting in a plan around that, whether it's sort of taking profits along the way or sort of cashing out and maybe waiting for things to calm down a bit. But I do think when you've got this type of volatility, it's very dangerous to not have an exit strategy. So I'm not saying sell now, but what I am saying is consider what your plan is when it comes to that. And no, I don't have an issue.
Yeah, I would agree with what Valek said there in terms of understanding at what point would you take profits or do you take profits? Because things are so volatile, you have to kind of have an idea of, right, if it gets here and take a little bit out, then wait and set and see and decide what's going to happen moving forward. I think it's really, really important to do that with volatile assets like cryptocurrency. I've done that. I've got some money set aside. I've got some more money to potentially go in. So I'm still trying to decide at the moment at what point do I go back in and buy on the dip and pound cost average my way in. That's really, really important. So if you haven't thought about that, then please do think about it. I don't have any of that either myself. I don't have any Shiba. There's a question here from Coolio. Would you recommend free trade? Free trade are very, very good. The only thing with free trade is this, and this isn't by any means a criticism or anything bad, but many people don't like the fact that you've got to pay for the ISA account, and they have a lot of the really decent ETFs, mid-cap, small-cap stuff behind a paywall. So if the ISA, I believe, is like £3 a month, and then you've got the premium membership, which is £9 a month. So to access the full range, you've got to pay, but they are a very, very good service. I actually have free trade on this channel as a live session on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So this is this coming Wednesday at 8 p.m. So if you come along to that one, you can ask them all the questions you want about what they do, how they do it, so on and so forth. But yeah, we've got Dan Lane from Free Trade coming on Wednesday. Best Vanguard Global Fund. It really depends. There are lots of funds, index funds and ETFs in Vanguard. It really depends on what your preference is. The VWRL, I think, is the ETF. That's a global ETF. So you can have a look at that. But there's quite a few. The thing is, when you're going to have a look at Vanguard, if you look at the index funds and the ETFs, look at them separately. Make sure you go and look at the actual fund makeup, the fund objectives, so on and so forth. You look at the top 10, you look at the asset allocations, and then decide from there. Alex, if you don't know what those basically mean, there's a couple of Vanguard videos that you can watch where I kind of show in that video how you get to the daily portfolio, that kind of stuff, the portfolio data, and so on and so forth. So there's a few videos on the channel that will help you there. Right, this is a long one. If the US economy / the dollar collapses entirely due to inflation and excess QE, however unlikely, for argument's sake, what happens to the S&P 500 and its underlying companies? Do they continue? I'm just trying to see if there's a follow-up to this. I don't think there is. I think I get the gist of this. I think you're asking, do they continue to grow? Right, so let's just say QE ends tomorrow, inflation runs out of control. The S&P 500, what happens to those group of companies? I think you will see a dip in the S&P 500 for sure. The benefit of the S&P 500, though, is that they are 500 of the biggest companies in the world. So these companies that will have people like Coca-Cola in there, regardless of how, and this is really where you measure the utility of and the importance of a company. And there will be many of them in the S&P 500 which will match this criteria. Coca-Cola is an example. It doesn't matter what inflation numbers are at, people are still going to drink Coke. So they're still going to sell what they basically produce. And that really is an indication of whether the companies have the ability to, number one, survive hyperinflation or inflation in its forms, and they stop QE. Those are the real tests. Those are fundamental tests. It doesn't mean that you're not going to see any volatility in the stock. You will, because that's how markets react. Markets don't like uncertainty. Markets don't necessarily like bad news. If QE stops, where the money's been going into the markets to prop up asset prices, then you're probably going to see a bit of volatility within the market. But if you're in it for the long term, it's all about riding that out. And Radek will be able to comment on this as well, because obviously this is the kind of stuff that you're looking at on a day-to-day as a popular trader, popular investor, aren't you?
Of course, and that's sort of been a general, I'd say, fear in terms of the questions that I've also sort of received on a day-to-day is what is actually going to happen with the US economy. I know there was all that fear around Evergrande too, and how the impact that would have on the US economy. And we, as a result of sort of all these factors, we did sort of see a dip in some of the American indices. But right now, I don't really think it's going to be a major problem within the next couple of months, but we will just have to wait and see.
Yeah. I mean, with Evergrande and stuff, I mean, it was my opinion that even with Evergrande, and I know that they weren't able to sell off some of the retail business this week, so that's increased the risk a little bit more. It isn't like Lehman Brothers. It's nothing like it. There isn't going to be a huge contagion that means that you're going to see a massive global dip as a result of that company defaulting on its promises, on its obligations. And you've had in the States the whole issue with the debt ceiling increase, and that's going up until the wire. I mean, look, that's a political issue. That's political posturing. They're going to come to some kind of agreement because they're not going to allow their markets to, well, at least for their reputation and credit standing, to take a hit because of a political squabble. So I don't think we ever have to worry about that kind of stuff. But these are the kind of things that I think are important for people to consider when investing into a market. It is always going to be volatile. You cannot negate that. And it can be volatile for a number of reasons, multitude of reasons, most of which you can't control, you have no say over. And that has to be part of your considerations when you're investing. And even more reason why, investing over the long term is important, because the S&P 500 might dip and, do a minus 2% this year. Who knows? But ultimately, you look at the track record, and we've spoken about track record for Bitcoin and Warren Buffett. The track record tells us that over the long term, the S&P 500 has always performed really well, although past performance is no indication of future performance, but it gives you a benchmark to kind of, base an assumption on. And I think that's what's really important in terms of trying to model or map out or try to get a level of expectation when you're investing.
Yeah.
Let's have a look and see. Right, I have several pension pots from previous companies, around 5. Should I merge into one pot? What's your view on self-managing where the fund sits, or should I let the pension companies manage it? Okay, so if you there's first and foremost, there's no in my opinion, there's no negative to you merging them into one pot. If anything, it's going to give you better oversight, a better ability to be able to view and review what's going on with your pensions at any given time. In terms of self-managing, it depends on where you are on your journey. If you're like 5 years from retirement, then no, absolutely not. You should probably seek some actual help, because you don't want to get this wrong. If you do get it wrong, it could be very, very costly. If you're further away from retirement, well, yeah, sure, you can self-manage it. You can, merge them into, I don't know, can you merge into Pension B? I don't know if you can consolidate, into Vanguard. I don't know if you can consolidate into Vanguard specifically. You'd have to go find each of them, transfer them over. You can do that. Obviously, the investment will be run by Vanguard. So they're kind of taking care of the investment side. You're just kind of viewing it every single year. If you have people like Pension B, for example, they can do the whole consolidation for you. They will manage the investment. Yes, you got oversight. It's on an app. You can see it. But I would really say it depends on whether you're closer to your retirement date or further away from your retirement date. If you're closer, you should probably get some help. Really, really get some help, because you don't want to get it wrong. If you're further away, then it's all going to be about the decisions of where you actually put it. Do you know where to put it? Do you know, kind of your expectations from it? What do you want in retirement? What is, what level of income are you going to need? What kind of lifestyle do you want? All these kind of things are key considerations. So, yeah, I don't know if you have a view on that, Ralik.
No, that's not my area of expertise.
Cool. All right. So, Carly's on here. There's Shiba Inu. We've already covered those ones. Someone's mentioned here, I think they're asking about the free trade support. I've not used the support, but I've heard that the support function in free trade is very, very good. They do get back to you very, very quickly. Fundsmith. Someone's asking about Fundsmith. I've not looked at Fundsmith, so I can't really give you a view on that, unfortunately. Might be one that I'll list down to review on the channel. Fantastic show tonight. Thank you, Kev. I really do appreciate that. Anna, so Pete, with companies that don't die, like you mentioned, Coca-Cola, would you recommend trying buying S&P 500 if they're in it, or individual stock? Depends on your exposure. I mean, what do you think, Ralik? Because, I mean, you can go and buy individual stocks in Coca-Cola. It is a strong company. I mean, they've got cash. They've got a really, really sell. I mean, I can't remember how many servings they sell of Coke a day, but it's in the millions, multiple millions. What would you buy individual, or would you buy as part of an S&P?
So I think it's a little bit of a combination. I really like, say, using the S&P as a overall hedge to the market, just being sort of exposed to everything. Whereas, say, something happens tomorrow and Coke has to recall all their products for some reason, that's going to completely sink their share price. It's unlikely to happen, but it can happen. And that's where diversity helps to actually reduce risk in that sense. Because if, say, something happens with Coke and the share price drops 20%, the S&P 500 is not going to drop 20%. Mm-hmm. So these are just some things to consider, where I would generally say invest in a single company over an index is if you've done your fundamental research into that company and you see value in excess of sort of, say, your benchmark. If the S&P 500 rises 5% and you've got a company that you've identified, you've analyzed, and you're like, okay, hold on a second, this thing should be at least 10 to 20% higher than what it currently is. It may be part of the S&P 500, but if you've identified that opportunity, then I would say go into the individual company. So having exposure to sort of a little bit of everything is a very useful tool. I generally sort of use indices like the S&P 500 or NASDAQ as a place to sort of park some of my crypto profits sometimes, where I will take it out of a more risky investment and then maybe buy a part of the S&P 500 with a little bit of those profits, because it's unlikely that I'm going to see anywhere, well, I'm pretty much not going to see anywhere near to the volatility in the S&P 500 that I will in, say, Bitcoin.
Yeah. And I think ultimately it's going to be about, the risk that you're willing to take. Yes, you can go and buy Coke as an individual company, but the analogy that I often use is what you're essentially doing is you've got a basket and you're putting one egg in that basket. If you drop that basket, there's a high probability that you're going to break that egg. Whereas if you go and buy an index fund like the S&P 500, in that basket, you've got 500 eggs. So if you drop it, you might lose 100, but you've still got 400 of them, which are still intact and still okay. They're still going to give you through. And that's where it really kind of matters. Regardless of the track record of Coca-Cola and how big and established they are, what Red just mentioned there in terms of if they needed to recall product, it could happen. You would hope that the business has controls, processes, checklists, things like that in place to ensure that doesn't happen. And I'm sure that they do, but you never know what might happen. So it's all those kind of things you have to take into consideration. So me personally, have I got Coke? I have got Coke, but I've also got S&P 500. I've also got global funds, which will own Coca-Cola because it is such a big global company. I would rather be safer on the risk side than overexposing myself to a risk that I have no control over. And that's the beauty of it, buying an S&P 500 or an index fund or an ETF. It helps you manage the things that you have no control over because you've got your money spread over more eggs than just one or two or four. And that's how you should look at it as an investment when you're trying to approach it. Right, let's see. There's a question about XRP on here. So I didn't know this, but apparently the whole Bitcoin conversation that the Bank of England are talking about, developing Bitcoin, which will be the national coin, as it were. Apparently they're going to be using the XRP for that. So what's your view on XRP at the moment?
Whether they'll win their case or not, I do think they'll win their case. I hope they don't sort of settle or anything like that. I'm pretty sure they've said that they're not going to settle. But I would love to sort of see them win that case to set a precedent for everything else. Because right now it's sort of like the SEC comes knocking on your door.
Yeah,
and they're
for
like,
anything. Yeah.
For anything that, say, you did 3 years ago when there was no law, they introduce a law and then they come knocking on your door being like, you broke this law we just created 3 years ago. And there's no one really knows what to do. They constantly say, if you're not sure if you fall within our framework, come speak to us. But then when a lot of the time companies get pushback where they try and speak to them and then they don't get any feedback. It's like, is this a security? Yeah. They're like, we don't know. It might be.
Yeah.
And it's this constant uncertainty in the space in general. I'd love to see some clear guidance. And I think the whole XRP situation will lead to that. Do I think XRP will win their case? I really do. And I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, with Bitcoin and everything, yes, there's a lot of different projects which sort of will be built on existing foundations, and that's just going to sort of improve the overall utility for that particular framework at the end of the day. So if that does get approved and they start doing that, I mean, we would likely see a spike in XRP's price as a result. You'd at least expect that. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, XRP hasn't been doing much recently. I mean, if I just bring it up quickly.
You can share your screen as well, I think.
I'm not sure how to do it on Restream, so
Okay.
but it's fine. Yeah, I mean XRP's just been completely flat, not really showing any movement. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but I do think they'll win their case, and we'll hopefully finally get some type of precedent from the SEC or from a judge as to what is actually okay and what is not okay.
Yeah. I would hope that exactly the same. And, when you are dealing with the regulators, I mean, I haven't dealt with the SEC, but I have dealt with the FCA here. And, they have these handbooks and they're there to provide this framework of what you can and cannot do. But the one thing that really annoys me about the regulator, and I'm sure it'll be the same with the SEC as well, because they don't want to be backed into a corner, is they tell you, we need to go, well, you need to go and read this out of the handbook. But then it's left to interpretation. And then when you ask the question, they can't actually tell you whether your interpretation is right or completely incorrect. So they back you into a corner without backing themselves or committing themselves to actually guide you. And that's the real struggle with regulation, in the fact that oftentimes the framework is there, but there are 20 million ways of interpreting that framework. And if they are, trying to retroactively kind of enforce laws, that's completely wrong. And I think, winning a case will give them some precedent so that we know where the boundaries are. And if anything, I think that will then kind of give a clear indication for people who are developing, dApps and all this kind of stuff to know, actually, I haven't got to look over, watch over my shoulder for possible regulatory interventions of any kind. Okay, saying he's 32. So yeah, you're 32, mate. So you've got quite a long way to go. So self-management may not be a bad idea. It will just be a case of making sure that you put it into maybe an investment option that is going to give you the best opportunity to grow your pension pot to as big a number as possible, while still staying in within your risk tolerance and being comfortable with the level of risk that you're taking. But I would say, because you're 32 and your retirement date is probably going to be 35 or so, you've arguably got 33 years. So go gun ho, go high risk, and then just monitor it on a year-to-year basis. You're not going to be able to access it until you're 55. And if you're not going to retire until you're 65, well, you might as well have it working as hard as possible for you as soon as possible, really. So, yeah. Right, Kai's asked here, during big market crashes or historical market crashes, are there specific types of stocks that do well, like commodities or technology, etc.? I'll let you answer this one first, Velik.
Yeah, I mean, during those big market crashes, you do tend to see people taking their money and sort of going into those safe havens. Historically, that has been commodities such as gold and silver and so forth. And I've actually been surprised with sort of recent corrections that we sort of haven't seen the flow more into things like Bitcoin.
I think that's going to change, though. I think that will change massively. And you're starting to see a divergence as well now between, market volatility and crypto. I think with market volatility now, you're seeing more of a move towards crypto and Bitcoin.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin does become that safe haven, whereas if there's a massive market crash in, say, US tech stocks, then people start to take that out and sort of shift it towards Bitcoin as a result.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of if you're looking at company, and again, this is going back to the foundations and the fundamentals around investing. Like, whenever you're buying a company, the fundamentals that you're looking at should be, right, what market sector, what do they sell, how important is what they sell or the service that they provide to day-to-day life. So yes, in a market crash, you will see the market dip overall, but companies that are selling, people have still got to eat. People still need water. People still need electric, gas, clothing. People still need those fundamentals. The appetite and the sales volumes might fall in certain areas, but generally food, people still need to eat. So those kind of stocks will always be able to thrive because they are necessities. They are what we essentially need. And that's where if you're building a portfolio, and it's not sexy in any way, shape, or form, but you should be thinking about day-to-day life. Who are the companies that you buy from every single day that you cannot do without every single day? Those are the kind of companies that are really good starting places, starting blocks for you to consider to give you the foundation. Then you can start to speculate with Neo and Tesla and all these other companies that may be a little bit more high risk, making sure you have a really strong foundation. So generally speaking, you'll see sectors that will generally do better in a market crash versus others because of the necessity for their services or their product. There was a follow-up here. What's the difference between a stock and a share? A stock and a share are exactly the same thing. It's just different language referring to exactly the same thing. So you can call them equities, stocks, or shares. Those are three terms, but they essentially mean a portion of a company, a share in a business, a stock, a part of equity in a business, essentially. Lewis, interesting topic of investing in stocks. I wonder if gold is also a worthy investment alongside investing in stocks. Also, I saw Revolut have an access to stock market. Is it worth it? Gold. You've already mentioned gold there, Reddick. I mean, it's a commodity, finite resource. It has been forever the safe haven, non-correlated to the markets. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely there might be sort of space for gold in a portfolio. I would never really say it's guaranteed to only go up, and I think we're seeing that it's sort of falling out of favor, especially with newer generations, where gold isn't seen as the be all and end all of a sort of a safe, guaranteed investment. And that's also where I mentioned earlier that we sort of see that push into Bitcoin. And I think we're going to continue to see that shift sort of as the new generations start to get involved in the investment space too. With regards to Revolut, I've used their stock trading platform before. I didn't like it. In general, I'm a huge fan of Revolut, but I didn't enjoy their stock platform. It's just, yeah, in terms of fees, and also it takes forever to close positions and withdraw money. Maybe they've vamped it up a bit since I used it, but no, I much prefer services like eToro, where it's just straightforward and easy to use without any of the BS that comes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used Revolut. It's not one that I've actually reviewed, so I can't really give a comment on that. On gold, spot on. I mean, I think you have to kind of think where the sentiment is. Like, Kathy Woods, and I spoke about this in the video, talked about the fact that, baby boomers have fueled the stock market for years and years and years now. If you think about the baby boomers, what was their go-to place, or the thing that what they always regarded as being safe? Gold, right? Because it is a finite commodity. It's a physical commodity as well. But I think with the way the world is going right now, it's going to a digital place. And with that switch in sentiment and societal view, digital gold, Bitcoin, I think will overtake gold as what people would regard as the safe haven. I think we're already seeing that right now, because we are seeing the investment industry view it as a hedge against inflation and a safe haven. So I think more than anything else, gold is still, yes, you can still use gold, and it is something that you can still physically buy and put money in. And yes, it should still hold value, and it will, but it's still going to be volatile. It's not going to increase in value forever and ever and ever. You'll have periods where it trades down, just like Bitcoin. But I think in the next 10 to 15 years, will the conversation be about gold? Nah, I don't think so. I think it's going to be more about Bitcoin being the digital gold, because the world is moving to a digital era, even more so now.
Yeah.
There's a question here on REITs. What are my views on REITs? REITs are great. They're really, really good. They're handy investment tools if you want income, because they've obviously got to pay a good large proportion of their profits out to their investors. I I think with REITs, though, you do kind of need to understand how they actually work and what kind of REIT you're buying. Are you buying, a commercial property building, like an office block that might have been vacant for the last 18 months? Or are you buying things like storage? Those kind of factors are important in the detail, because, buying a commercial place that might be office led, that hasn't had any revenue over the last, hasn't had usage and maybe dropped revenue over the last 18 months, may not necessarily be giving you the yields that maybe storage, which has been more favorable, has had. So I don't know if you've got any views on that.
Yeah, I mean, REITs are one of those things where I think it's an easy way for people to sort of get into property if they don't have any other means of doing so. I mean, it can be quite a daunting thing to get into property, and REITs sort of just make that easy. And like you said, high income generation and distribution. I think it's something like 90% of their income they need to distribute to shareholders. So yeah, it's great for that purpose.
Mm-hmm. There's a question on here from Mark. Your view regarding NEO, do you think they will grow and make an impact on the European market? I hope so. I've invested in some stock. You know what? I saw it, because obviously I drive a Tesla and I'm part of the Tesla forum. And in the Tesla forum, it's not just about Tesla, it's about the wider EV space. And someone spotted a NEO vehicle for the first time in Germany, apparently. So the question of whether they make a dent on the European market, potentially. But yeah, I think you have to kind of have a look at the EV space as a whole. I think that environment is hugely exciting, and there are some clear front runners. Tesla is at the front of that queue specifically. With NEO, because they are backed by the Chinese government, I think, and because of the size of the Chinese market, I think that as a business, they'll do very, very well. Whether they'll have an impact on the European market, I think is still yet to be seen. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are in China, but I think they're doing okay in China, but they're not doing they're not selling hundreds and thousands of units just yet. And I think personally, from a corporate strategy, they'll probably want to make sure that they've got a really good base in China, which is giving them revenue so that they can actually invest to sell into the European market, because that is a huge endeavor. That's just my thoughts, though. So I think they will have an impact, but will they be able to catch up with the likes of Tesla? Volkswagen are massive, massive competitors now. They're the second after Tesla. You've got the likes of BMW, Mercedes, Audi also producing electric cars. Will the quality of a Chinese car stand up to those companies? I don't know. And it's also that European kind of like sentiment around the quality of a build. I mean, Chinese cars, they are great, but sometimes they will argue, are they reliable? Do they have great build quality? That kind of stuff. So I think they'll have those hurdles. They could, but I think that's still yet to be seen. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think I've got sort of too much value to add here, but I would say I think a large impact on it also will be your current manufacturers and sort of how they adapt to the EV space too. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, you can have these new companies springing up, promising the world. But if the existing powerhouses also sort of jump on at a very early stage, then it can also sort of dampen the impact that the newcomers might have on the space. So in terms of NEO as a company itself, I don't really follow it. I haven't. It's not one of the stocks that I do actually follow, so I don't know too much about its actual fundamentals. But I definitely think the EV space is something that is super exciting, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more and more sort of governmental pressure being put on a shift to these electric vehicles too.
Yeah, and I think that's the one advantage that NEO does have. It's backed by the Chinese government, and there is a clear agenda to move towards EV, and they seem to be the forerunners in that. But I think as a business and as a product kind of like offering, yes, they're talking about swappable batteries, which is great, and they've got a load of stuff, but it's still very much they are looking to develop these things. And so Relix just mentioned there as well that by the time they get around to actually having implemented all of that stuff, where the front runners going to be, where the Tesla is going to be, where the Volkswagen is going to be. I mean, Tesla arguably are 5 years ahead of everybody else right now. So as everybody else catches up, they're not standing still. They're going to be accelerating and moving things even forward. So that translates into market share, product offering, just the compatibility and usability of the product. And those are the big considerations for those kind of stocks. I do have a little bit of NEO, but I don't have a lot, because I'm a big Tesla fan. I'm really, really bullish on Tesla because I have had the product for such a long time and I know the hype behind the company. And I understand from a service practical point of view of these electric vehicles. I mean, I know people have bought, Taycans. They go and buy it. Yeah, it looks great. It's fantastic. Build quality is great. But actually, when you get around to the real practicalities of, I need to make a long trip, what's the charging network? They don't have a charging network right now. That's way behind. And Tesla have a very, very robust international charging network. That advantage is a huge advantage. So much so that people give back their cars and then go and have to go and buy a Tesla because they realize that actually from a practicality point of view, they're more suitable to the way of life. I don't think that is going to change because if you look at the main point of contention being charging networks, who's invested in actually rolling out a huge international charging network that isn't going to take 3 to 4, 5 years to fully implement? By that point, Tesla's going to double, triple their charging network. So key things, really, really key things. All right, I'm just having a look at the questions here. There's only a few more, so we get through these and then we'll call it, because I'm bearing in mind we're about an hour and a half into this right now, so we try to keep it short. I think this might be for you around research on coins, running. What do you actually research? What are the key things? So he's mentioned here, does he look at, do you look at smart contracts? What kind of things do you look at when you're researching a coin?
So it's actually not that much different from when researching a crypto as it is to researching a company. The only main difference I would say in the way you approach it is crypto is very much sort of like proof of concept, where they need to actually be able to deliver on their promises. And that's where I think there's maybe even more of an emphasis put on the actual team around that coin. If you go onto their website and you see like a bunch of like stock photos of their development team, you're most likely going to get rug pulled. So it's things like that where you have to look at it from every angle. I start with coin market cap, so I'll go there, I'll look at its rank to identify, okay, what am I dealing with? Am I dealing with sort of something that's maybe in the top 100 and I need to approach from the sense of, okay, this is an established project with generally quite a lot of backers behind it? Or is it maybe in the thousands or 2,000s or 3,000s? Then it is, the first question I ask myself is it a scam? And you need to take a look. Normally the dead giveaway for me is if it's a scam or not is you read the description. If it's just filled with buzzwords like NFT marketplace or hyper deflationary, like we return 10% of all fees back to the users and burn another 5%. It's the same description for all of these projects. You might have one or two that is sort of unfortunately chosen to take this route of describing it. That might not be a scam, but 90% of the time, or I'd say higher than 90% of the time, you're looking at something that's not a good project. Then taking a look at their website. Seeing the actual team behind it, what is their background? What they like to do a lot of the time as well is say like, oh, I graduated from this, and that. It's like, I don't care about that. I don't care where you graduated from. I care about what you've done. What is your background? What is your experience? Like, yes, you could graduate from MIT, but do you even know what crypto is? Mm-hmm. And that's where you've got to find that line between sort of what is the fluff part of the promotion and what is the actual core utility, looking at how that project can be applied, what you can do with it. Also, what's the competition like? I mean, there's so many NFT projects right now that are promising NFT market spaces, but is it actually viable? We've got if tens, if not hundreds of these projects that are all promising the same thing. So what is the competition like in the industry itself? It's not only the micro factors of that particular project, but also the macro as a whole in terms of the entire industry. So I would say sources to actually find this. I normally start with CoinMarketCap, then I'll move on to the company's website, sort of take a look at their management team, read their white paper. Also the community. Community is a massive part. And you see that in the meme investment side of things, where your meme projects, people are investing, like people might think there's no fundamental value and that it's a scam, but the price is still constantly increasing. That's because it's backed by a very strong community. Like, yes, fundamentally the project might be a bit shit, but as a whole, it's actually got a community which allows it to sort of continue even having a chance to thrive. And you sort of see that with projects like SHIB and Doge as a whole. So community is important. Are people holding it? What are the founders doing with their tokens? I think that's another thing people overlook is are the founders actually holding, or they're just offloading as quickly as they can? Like we mentioned earlier, watch what they do, not what they say. If the creators are saying this is the most amazing project in existence, it's going to be the future of crypto, but they're busy offloading their tokens right at the beginning, it's obvious that everyone's about to get rug pulled. So you need to be careful of these things. So I'd say a lot of due diligence is needed, and that level of due diligence probably gets more and more intense the further you go down in terms of ranking. And that's why I think something like CoinMarketCap is a good place to start.
Mate, so many gems right there, like really, really important stuff. Because I think it's very, very easy to get, because it's sexy, right? Crypto is exciting. It's the hype right now. It's very, very easy to get caught up in that kind of stuff. But taking a step back and just being, looking at it from a dispassionate point of view and being very methodical and logical is so important. And it might take you an hour or two to go and find information on Google stuff, but it's an hour, 2 hours that are very, very well worth spending to make sure that you're not putting your money into something that is going to be a dud. Because unfortunately, the crypto space has been rife with scams. I mean, crypto eats. Like, if you did a little bit of due diligence, there was a video on YouTube actually. The wallet, it was an open wallet that all of it was going into. So clearly he was going to take the money and run. Clearly. But if you didn't do your due diligence, you're not going to know. So due diligence is really, really important. There's a question here about HBAR. I haven't looked at this, so I can't really provide comment on this. I've just had a look at it on Yahoo Finance. It's a cryptocurrency, I believe. I've not had a look at it. Launched in 2017. What is that? 50 billion coin supply. Have you come across these?
Yeah, that one's actually on my watch list to research, okay. But yeah, I haven't had time to get to it and give it the proper due diligence that is necessary. Just I want to add one more thing with regards to that due diligence, and it's a very important lesson that I learned. I can't remember where I heard it, but it's so true, and that is if you don't have time to do your due diligence, then it's not the right time to invest. If you cannot wait an hour to like 5 hours before you invest in it, then you shouldn't be investing in it anyway. Anything that time sensitive, it's a gamble. And yes, you might miss it shooting up by like 20 to 50% in that time it takes you to research it. But at least then you can have that soundness to know that, okay, well, yes, I'm buying in at a 20% premium, but at least I know I'm not going to lose 100% of my value.
Spot on. And you know what? If it is a good investment, that 15 to 20% is going to be small fry to what you will enjoy moving forward. And this is the thing that's really, really important. Don't feel as though, oh my God, FOMO, YOLO, I've got to get in right now. There is no such thing as you've got to get in right now. Like, wait, be patient, look at it logically, and then pull the trigger. You've got to ask yourself and ask the questions of what you want to invest in so that you have 100% satisfaction. And if there is a doubt, don't don't do it. Just don't do it. It's not worth it in the end. So that's a really good point on there. So I was asking, what about FTSE 100? FTSE 100 is also cool. It is the top 100 companies in the UK. So as an index, that's pretty strong. The UK, you can argue, has its own challenges with obviously Brexit, energy prices, inflation, all kinds of stuff. But generally speaking, those top 100 companies are multinationals as well. Their income won't just be in like the pound. They'll have euro income, dollar income as well. So you might have the benefit of currency benefits in there as well. And that was a big factor when obviously Brexit, the pound plummeted. No one really understood for a while why the FTSE 100 was going at all-time highs, because these companies are multinationals with foreign income in different currencies. So FTSE 100 is great, but it will still be volatile. But there will still be opportunities within the FTSE 100 as well. You can get the FTSE 100 index funds and ETFs also as an easy place to invest. I think that brings us towards the end of the questions in here. There is a comment here from Kai. He's saying the way the world is going, meme coins and NFTs will be the safe haven. Who knows? Does make me laugh, and you got a smiley face and a cry one at the end of that. So I don't know. I think it's a really, really interesting place. I think it's one of those situations where, you've got to stay abreast of it. Don't be ignorant to it. Just, watch it, read about it, go and watch Cryptopia. It's on Amazon. It's a really, really good program. And just listen to like little podcasts. There is one podcast that I came across. Let me just see if I can find it on here. Her name is Crypto Casey. So Crypto CASEY. You can find it on Spotify, but she breaks down crypto in the most simple language in terms of what is the blockchain, what is that all about, what is Bitcoin, what is Ethereum. And once you get those kind of foundational kind of like bits of information, you'll understand the rest of it, or you'll get into a place where you can understand the rest of it. Yes, it's quite complex, and yes, some of the theory of it can be mind-blowing, but you have to have a fundamental information. There's, podcasts are very, very easy for you to, consume. You can listen to it while you're on a jog, in the gym, in the car, whatever you're doing. Just, but go and listen to those kind of podcasts and stuff and get your knowledge up. But crypto, and I'm excited about it, especially on the DeFi front. I'm really, really excited about it. So it's been really, really good to have you on, Radek. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure as always. Thanks so much for having me on. Always enjoy it. And now that I don't have the burden of the eToro exams.
How did the exams actually go?
They went well. So I essentially passed all the elite requirements, and now I'm focusing on the elite pro requirements. I just want to get those out the way as soon as possible. Like, I'm nowhere close to the assets under management to actually get elite pro, but yeah, it's UK based exams. So the one I did pass was the investment management one, and now I just need to get through now the next one I need to get through is the UK regulation exam, which is a pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Mate, exams. I've been thinking about doing more exams. I've been thinking actually taking the IMC, to be fair. It's just finding the time to take it with everything else that I've got going on. And if I do take it, am I taking it because I'm actually going to utilize it moving forward? I don't know just yet. So I've kind of like been hovering over it for like a year or so. Like, do I really need to or not? I don't know. But yeah, good to hear that you passed it though, because that's a huge weight off your shoulders.
You're telling me, like, I'm relieved. I've got my life back.
Yeah, good. Listen, we need to speak offline as we end this in a moment. Sure. Maybe we can do this, make this a bit more of a regular thing. Maybe once a month, come on and stuff like that and chat. But guys, you have been on this stream for the last 1 hour and 38 minutes. Really, really do appreciate you being on here, as always, on a Sunday evening. We're heading towards almost 11 o'clock right now. Thanks for the support. Really do appreciate it. Whatever you're doing this week, have an amazing one, and I will catch you a bit later on.